Hey yo, what's up everybody? None of this is real, and it all ends in chaos. I'm about to connect all the dots when it comes to explaining the Fractsidus, Abby, and the nature of Solaris 3, because I think the real villain of Solaris is not the Fractsidus, not the Thenodians, and not the Lament. They are just pawns in the grand scheme, a microcosm of a deeper issue. This is the Wuthering Waves theory of everything. Let's get it. Before we dive into any of this, we first need to talk about Abby. This cute, lovable pet-like thing isn't at all what it seems. At the start of Chapter 1, Act 7, we're tasked with finding a name for this creature, and literally with the slip of the tongue, it just barely says its true name, Abraxas, before shifting back to Abby. Of course, we wouldn't know that Abraxas is Abby's true name until the most recent quest, 211, where Leviathan Thenodian actually says it. So what is the significance of this name, and how does it relate to everything I'm about to talk about? And who the heck is Abraxas anyway? The name stems from Gnosticism. Now don't trip, because we're about to go over this real quick and get back to how this all relates. So, in Gnosticism, there is this unknowable, unnameable God who is responsible for having created the foundation of everything. It's a being of pure light, and it's the source of all being. In contrast, there is the Demiurge. The Demiurge is a god that doesn't know where it came from, and it thinks it's the true God. It's ignorant of all the divine knowledge that it should have. And he creates humanity and the imperfect material world. Beneath the Demiurge are the Archons, his creations designed to keep humanity tethered to the physical realm and to not discover the truly divine. In Gnosticism, Abraxas is a very powerful being that is above the Demiurge but below the unknown God. It's a god of both light and darkness, creation and destruction, chaos and order. Chaos and order. Put a pin in those two words because we're coming back later. Abraxas is neither good nor evil, but he makes both possible. Abby symbolizes this duality in the design of its eyes. One blue, one red. Obviously, Abby has a connection to Rover, who appears to be a being of light. But from Chapter 2, Act 11, we can see that Abby also once shared a connection with darkness as well. But we can go deeper than that. If Kuro has taken its inspiration of Gnosticism to the overarching grand story, it might tell us even more about the motivations of the Fractsidus. You see, Gnosticism is all about humanity waking up, gaining divine knowledge, aka Gnosis, and ascending beyond the material world. I mean, some members of the Fractsidus don't exactly give off the impression of scholars at first. In Chapter 1, Act 3, Yang Yang calls them a group of extremists obsessed with fusing humans with tacit discords. However, you could look at them like people who are waking up in search of divine knowledge. In fact, if there's one thing we do know about the Fractsidus, it is that they seek out knowledge. All the experimentation on fusing humans with tacit discords, and as we see in Mount Firmament side quests, even low-level artificers do their own experiments, albeit unsuccessfully at times. Overseers have been seeking knowledge on the Second Awakening process, trying to create artificial resonators, and studying Thenodians. They even had a history of working with the Court of Savante, a famous research organization with numerous laboratories across the land. We learned in Chapter 2, Act 7, all about Frolova's experimentation pursuits to attain knowledge. And it's from her and her character profile that we learn about the Fractsidus base, and that they actually have proper scientists there, and they're always searching for answers and trying to break new ground. In the same vein of this conversation on knowledge, in Chapter 211, we see the Grand Architect say this: all so that humanity may cross that final gateway into eternity. Our goal in Jinzhou and Renacita have been fulfilled. a Thernoidian resonator, an artificial resonator, and a second resonance awakening. We now possess the knowledge and the means. Now it sounds almost technical the way he says it, but the technical and the divine go hand in hand in Solaris. Whatever knowledge they've gained might culminate into whatever their gnosis is in the context of this story. They speak of evolution and the attainment of power almost as a necessary means for ascension, not just for the individual, but for all of humanity. And we'll come back to that idea too. Cristofaro says this at the end of chapter 211.
Civilization's infancy must come to an end. So long as humanity remains cradled in the Sentinel's arms, it will never walk, let alone evolve. That is why I wrote this final act.
Now, final act aside, this connection between humanity, civilization, and the existence of gods on Solaris 3 is very interesting. These three things have come up quite a bit in the story so far. For instance, way back in chapter 1 prologue, Yang Yang tells us that sentinels are present wherever civilization thrives. In chapter 2 act 4, Imperator says the Thernoidian cannot be undone whilst civilization endureth. So there can be no sentinel without any significant human civilization. And so far, there has been no Thernoidian without a sentinel. But Thernoidians don't directly require humanity to thrive. They of course feed on humanity's frequencies. And I can't help but feel that there's something about this that the Fractsidus seems to know that we, the rover, do not. I mean, there's apparently a lot that the rover doesn't know. Like the fact that they and the Fractsidus worked together in the past. When it comes to humanity, civilization, and the gods, Scar says this: no souls deserve salvation. This world was born from chaos and exists in disorder. The only winning move is to be worse, wilder, to out-chaos the chaos. Every noble act of salvation makes chaos hungrier. Now think back, prior to this, when was the last time we've heard the word chaos used this frequently in the story? Notice how the word chaos is capitalized here. It's being personified, or it's an actual being. The last time we've heard chaos used this much was in chapter 2 act 9. Now, it didn't seem like much was going on in that act at the time, but I think that whole act was there to set up for what we're about to encounter. You see, the term chaos was used in 2:9 to talk about fate, and they seem to be one and the same. The concept of fate itself implies complete or at least some predestination. That is, essentially, on some level, your path in life has already been set. It's preordained. And that is the Fractsidus' true goal: to attain divine knowledge and power, enough to break away from fate and to no longer be bound on its path. They know that if humanity as a whole can't avert their path, it will end in disaster or chaos. And I believe that is at the core of that dialogue between Scar and Cristofaro at the end of chapter 211. When Scar talks about some of humanity not being able to overcome the pain, Cristofaro says,
all our choices born of free will. And only through free will can we defy the surging tides of fate.
This is why we both seek to change it, for beneath such tides, no one is content to remain merely a humble servant. This idea of fate is the whole reason of Frolova's change in trajectory, as she repeats nearly the same exact words we tell her in chapter 2:7, when we tell her about how we changed ourselves and started over.
If this world can't be changed, then maybe it's time to take a different path, even if it's nothing like before. Just like how I chose to change myself.
If this world truly cannot change, perhaps I will seek a new path for myself.
All of this comes back to fate. In chapter 1 act 8, we're given the reason Rover chose to erase their memories, which was to find a way to fix the Tethys system, a system instrumental to helping fight against the Lament. However, Understanding how fate plays a role, it ties everything together. There's actually another reason Rover decided and continues to decide to do this. Because remember, this is not our first time wiping our memories. Centuries ago, when we first met Frolova, we were wiping back then. Act 2-9 seemed like it had nothing to do with anything, when really it had everything to do with everything. In 2-9, Yuno read the future of a man who sought to deceive fate by switching places with his twin brother. This is what I believe Rover to be trying to do by erasing his own memories and starting again. Rover wants to alter whatever fate has in store. This might be why the Grand Architect seems so familiar with Rover. Perhaps in one of our previous lives, we teamed up against Chaos. What if we found out by destabilizing civilization, we could break away from fate and truly ascend? But maybe this was something Rover just couldn't accept. Whatever the case, the result was us wiping and deciding to be against them. But you know what? I think we can go even further to the potential core of what Solaris 3 really is. What really is fate in respect to Solaris 3? Now, this might seem a bit far-fetched, but I think there's enough evidence for it. The theory of everything takes us all the way back to Black Shores to a little side quest called Boundary of Deduction, released way back in version 1.3. In this quest, there's a Kubot in front of a sealed room. The Kubot is bugging out. So we enter the sealed room that apparently no one had the clearance to enter. The security mode deactivates when it recognizes that we have top level clearance. In this room, the systems are also bugging out. But one of the most interesting parts is the reason everything is bugging out. Through reading the logs, we find out that there's a whole simulated civilization in the systems, and we're tasked with shutting it down because it's actually starting to affect the real world. Members of this civilization send messages to us, telling us not to shut it down, implying that this civilization is comprised of actual sentient beings. And I think this is a representation of the world we occupy in Solaris 3. Have you ever heard of simulation theory? It's a theory that numerous high-profile scientific figures believe likely to be true. Essentially, the theory is that any sufficiently intelligent civilization with the ability to simulate another increases the probability that they themselves are likely simulated. Meaning that outside of the top civilization in this chain, there can essentially be countless civilizations unknowingly being simulated all the way down. This might explain the Tethys system. The Tethys system is an ancient piece of technology and no one really knows where it came from. And as old as Rover is, it's implied to be even older. And the final piece of evidence for this connection is its name. The alternative name to Tethys is Civilization Simulation Sand Table. Now think back to when we first met Sanhua in Chapter 1, Act 1. Sanhua is blind, but she sees the world via its frequencies. When Sanhua meets Rover, we get a glimpse into how she processes the world. The visual representation and sound effects are a clue to the nature of the world. It all appears as code. Jumping forward to Sentinel Imperator's Discoid, the civilization capsule. Once inside, Imperator tells us that it drafted the blueprint, aka the fate of Renacita. It was responsible for giving people the Genesis Nexus and other technologies, aka pseudo-divine knowledge of the physical realm. And probably one of the earliest major clues of it all was given to us by Chung Li in the Somnowhere side quest. She says,
"Have you ever considered how someone with lost memories might confuse a dream with reality? Perhaps paying closer attention to your surroundings could bring you closer to understanding the true nature of reality."
To which Rover replies, "What are you hinting at? Solaris is a figment of my imagination, aka not real?" So what does all of this mean? Well, In this simulation, Fate is the original programming, the default mode network. The Sentinels are the Archons, agents created by the Demiurge. Remember when I said Rover appears to be a being of light? Well, looks can be deceiving. I believe Rover is genuinely trying to do the right thing, but doesn't know any better. Just like the Demiurge. The reason Rover and the Sentinels don't age like everyone else isn't the same reason that Frolova doesn't. It's because they were never truly from this world in the first place. In fact, both WUWA and Imperator are said to have descended, and their respective artifacts, the Earthwind Wedge and the Myeonlong Chamber, were their traveling vessels. They are Rover's Archons. They, as well as Rover, are beings from outside the simulation, trying to stop an anomaly. Just like the locked room, the anomaly is the lament, and at the end of it all, I believe we'll find that we are the reason for everything. And as cruel and crazy as the Fractsidus seems, they are the ones who are trying to find the truth, tipping the scales of fate, aka chaos, aka the simulation, to obtain true free will and achieve transcendence from this world. Anyways, what do you guys think of this theory of everything?
It's just a theory. I could be mistaken.
Do you agree? Let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, I'll catch you in the waves. Peace.